Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all the audience that are join us online to this second session on lessons on innovation from other sectors. On behalf of the conveners that have gently accepted to organize this session, I want to welcome you to the session. It is Fundación Getulio Vargas, Mecorot, the Institute of Public Utilities from Michigan State University, and the Inter-American Development Bank. Yesterday, in our first session, we learned about the stark difference between three public utility services, which are telecom, energy, and water and sanitation. And it's amazing how close they are to universal access and how far away in water and sanitation we are. In today's world, more than 2 billion people don't have access to safe water or drinkable water, and close to 3.67 billion people don't have access to adequate sludge management. We learned that in those other sectors, innovation played a significant role, but through a brilliant presentation made by Jan and Professor Becher, that if you guys haven't seen the presentation, I encourage you to go to the online session and see it. We've learned the different aspects that make unique this sector, that have contributed for the slow progress, so to speak, as well as the different barriers that the sector presents in order to move forward. But there's one country, not only one country in this world, but one country that has made significant progress, not only in managing water, energy, and food through water holistically, and has ensured that their population has water security, food security, and energy security. They treat 96-97% of the wastewater they reuse. They use desalination. And they live, or they are in one of the most water scarce areas in the planet. And it's a region that is in permanent conflict, and that's Israel. So we're going to have the pleasure to learn how is that they managed to achieve this, what for many cities and many regions in the world seems to be impossible or a miracle. And later on, we're going to learn about what's happening in South America, in the city of Mendoza, in India, in the region of Punjab, and in Africa, in South Africa, in Cape Town. So without any further delay, I would like to give the mic to Geneva, who is our young scientific programming committee member, who has also been an important part in organizing this session. Geneva, the mic is yours.
That was Sergio. Okay, so thank you everyone so much for coming and joining the second session, as Sergio mentioned, of our seminar series. I will be your moderator today to take you through this and hopefully make it a little bit fun. As Sergio mentioned, I am the Young Scientific Program Committee member for this SIWI Seminar series, so I've been helping to organize it, and in my professional capacity, I am a supervisor of water conservation in California for a public water utility in the San Francisco Bay Area. So a few reminders for today's presentation. This presentation is actually being live translated to Spanish, and portions of the presentation will be translated back live into English from Spanish. So I implore you all to open up your phone and download the Interprify app. It's spelled as it is on the screen. And then you'll be able to put in the code World Water Week, WWW12011, which is our session ID. And that way you'll be able to listen in English for the presentation that's going to happen live in Spanish, or vice versa. So I do really recommend that everyone does that right now to get us, so that everyone can be listening to the entire presentation. So to kick it off today, we're gonna actually start with a little bit of a poll to see who's here in the room and to kind of kick us off on some discussion questions as we're thinking about learning from other sectors, as we're thinking about innovation, and as we're thinking about, what is it that causes that enabling environment for innovation. So if everyone could get out their phone, and those of you online, we do have an online audience, if you could also get out your phone and or just go to slido.com and type in our session number, I'm going to let a few more people join in so we can just kind of start to see who's in the room. And I know that I didn't have all of the possible types of organizations, so we'll see how much other comes. Wow, we're pretty tied right now with the public sector, the private sector, NGOs. Okay. I'm going to let it go for another 5 seconds until I get like one more response, maybe. Academia's going down, as Diego says. Okay, so that was an easy one, a softball, if you will. So now we're going to kind of start just getting our brains going. Do you think the management of the water sector should be public or private? Ooh, we're tied off to the races. And this is to get you thinking so that during our presentations today, we're going to be talking about our really intelligent presenters are going to be giving some really interesting case studies that speak to some of these thoughts. And then in the Q&A later, you'll be able to ask them questions as well. So, okay, so we're, about 3/4, 1/4. Interesting. We'll see how that goes. Oh, it's sliding away. Well, for sake of time, I'm going to go to the next one. Are you willing to work on an effort now, even if you won't see the results in the near future? So one of our speakers I was talking to earlier was kind of posing this idea of intergenerational problems. So if you have a problem today, and if my work is not going to solve it, but is going to be looking forward at a problem that might be affecting my grandkids, even me as a young professional, are we going to be working on those efforts, and are we prioritizing and investing in that effort? So everyone's saying yes. We'll see what our speakers say to that. Okay, and then finally, this is a potentially provocative, given that this year's theme is innovation that we're talking about. Is there sufficient technology to solve the world's water challenges already? Or do we need more technological innovation? So do we need more new technologies to solve the problems, or do we already have enough and we just need to think about how we're implementing them? That was maybe a precursor. So I'm going to give everyone another 30 seconds to, less than that, 15 seconds to respond to this one. And those of you online, I want to see you adding in as well. Okay, we're getting some. So this is actually pretty split. And as a preview, we're going to ask these again at the end and see if anyone has decided, thought differently after we talk about this for a little bit. Okay. Well, for sake of time, I want to get to dive in since we have some really incredible presentation content that will speak to these. So I feel very fortunate. Yes?
Sorry, Gerald. Can you please have the code for the Interprify?
Yes. Thank you. So the Interprify code is going to be our session code. So it's WWW12011. Thank you for asking, though, since that means everyone is joining the Interprify and will be able to understand the whole session. And I'm listening in Spanish in my ear right now. It sounds great, so, it's working. Okay, so back to where we were. I feel very fortunate to have been able to work with Dr. Diego Berger on this, to convene this seminar series. And as Sergio mentioned, Dr. Diego Berger has worked around the world in his role as an international special projects coordinator for Mekarut Water Company in Israel to advise other agencies and other organizations on hydrology and resource management issues. So he's very, very knowledgeable in this space, and he is going to speak to us about the evolution of the water sector in Israel, which is a fascinating case that I think we all can learn a lot from. So off to you, Diego.
Hello? It's working. Only one thing. At the end of all the session, we will make the same questions. Is to check, because we have here people from the higher education. We want to check if the people, what they learned during the session, okay? If someone changed the way he sees things. Okay, so let's start with, I will talk about the history of the water in Israel, because all the time came people to Israel to buy technologies. And the technology is only the last stage of the history. I want to show you which, let's see, decision or which also policies were implemented during the whole history. I came from Mekorot, that is a national water company that was, let's see, was founded 11 years before the State of Israel. So now we are 85 years old, and the State of Israel is only 75. All the time we say that we adopt part of the State of Israel as a department inside the water company. Okay? So I like to put in the first slides the most important, in case someone fell asleep during the rest of the presentation. So you understand that the main thing is the management. The technology only could, let's see, solve a few, maybe 5% of the problems. Technology is not a goal. It's only a mean to be more efficient and to supply water to everyone. So we have to see what is the goal that we have and to get help from the technologies. But it's not the main problem in the world, okay? The question that not only the people has water in the world is not related to technology and not also with budget, okay? So the main thing. Other thing I want to put that there's not magical solutions. And the main question here are the problem that the management is the reflex of the education that one country has. So it's related to the value that we give to the water. And this is the main problem, how you change behavior in the cultural problem, an educational problem, okay? So, and this is in Hebrew, it's not to check if you understand Hebrew, but this is in 48, we could only supply 10 liters of water in Jerusalem. And this is how to explain to the people in Jerusalem how to use 10 liters per day. So it's the beginning of what we call the culture of, let's say, scarcity, or scarcity of water. So they told the people that you have to leave 2 liters for drinking water, part of the water for cooking, part of the water for final cleaning, but also you don't have to throw this water. So it's also, let's see, giving the basis for the reuse of the water. So when you explain to the people how you have to use this water wisely, they will use. And this, again, is 75 years old, this sheet. And here it is explained in Hebrew to each one of the inhabitants in Jerusalem how to use this water, okay? That's what is the basis of the culture of water in Israel. And again, this is according to our experience. What are the 4 pillars? Because we are talking a lot about policies and technologies and innovation. This is the 4 things that we think that should be in the water sector in order to succeed. The first law is from 55, that is all the water supply and consumed should be measured. I told this is the 11th commandment. When Moses came back from the Mount Sinai, this is the 11th one that get lost, but this is the 11th, okay, believe me. And again, since 55, we have water meters also for agriculture. When I talk about this water law, or this measuring law in Latin America, the first thing that they ask me is, okay, you want to measure because you want to charge for the water. And they say, no, what you don't measure, you cannot manage, okay? For decades, the water for agriculture in Israel was subsidized, but was measured, okay? It's not related one thing to the other. The second thing is the water law. And it's who belongs the water, okay? It's written that all forms water resources belong to the public, not to the state, to the public, and this obligation of the state to manage this for the well-being of everyone, okay? And it's written that it's not only the domestic or only the drinkable water. All forms of water, of the water resources, even the effluents that we reuse belong to the public, okay? They saw, or they see that maybe there will be other kind of water resources that will also belong to the public. It's not a private issue here. The third and the fourth pillars were implemented in 2005 when we start to desalinate in large scale, okay? So the desalination is the most expensive kind of water. So they made two things that are very, very, let's say, unique. The first one, until 2005, we had 8 ministries that had to deal with the water. Since 2005, we have only one responsible. You cannot manage the water sector with a lot of ministries, okay? And the second one, we give tools to them. That is, the water sector is self-financing. It's a closed sector. All the money came only for the water bill. We don't have any budget from the government. So we are independent from the government, okay? So the decision in the water sector doesn't have a bias from the political part of the country, okay? So I told you that in 55 we have this measuring law. We had data about the consumption of water in Israel since 58. And this is the history. Domestic and industry is going up through this is the population in Israel. In this year is when I came to Israel, but it's not that because of that the population have this inflection point. Okay, it's not related to me. Okay, so this is increasing according to the population. That is around 1.8 to 2% per year. You can see the agriculture is all time in the same order of magnitude, and at the beginning it was 80% of the consumption, now it's around 50-50, okay? And the thing that is important here is this one. What were the policies that were implemented during the history of Israel, okay? Since the beginning, we were talking about irrigated agriculture. So each agriculture has one connection with the water meter, and it's not, let's say, depending on the amount of rainfall that we have. And we talk about infrastructure and regulation. Since the 60s, was shift all the irrigation from surface irrigation to pressurized. And the same guy that make this national water carrier, that is infrastructure project that give water from the north to the south, the same one was one of the guys that invented the drip irrigation, okay? So in parallel, during the 70s, so let's see, 40 years ago, all the agriculture was already pressurized. We are talking about 40 years of pressurized, okay? During the 90s, we start to reuse effluent. We are reusing now 85% of all the effluent of Israel. And in 2005, we enter into the large desalination era, okay? So this is what happened with the reuse, and I will explain at the end how we convince the agriculture to use this kind of water, because mainly it's according to the price of the water and why I have to use this water. Mainly this water has also nutrients, okay? So it's good for the agriculture not to use regular, let's see, potable water. So this water has also nutrients and also is cheaper. And the third thing, I can assure to the agriculture sector this kind of water, because it came from, if I supply water to the city, I have this water supplying to the agriculture sector. So since we start to reuse, this is the potable water for agriculture, and this is the reuse. Since 2015, we supply, let's see, almost 50% of the water for agriculture came from reuse, and the rest is of potable or marginal water, that is saline water, for instance, okay? And one thing that I want to point out, we don't have water rights. We have here people from Chile. In Israel, the agriculture get water according to the size of the land, in which region he is, the type of crop, but mainly according to the availability of the water. So if we don't have water to supply in this region, you cannot make agriculture. So the parameter that limit the use of the agriculture is the amount of water that we can supply. And we can talk a little bit about, because one of the questions, what is this public or private, okay? In Israel, we have only one regulator, it's public, totally private, public. We are let's see, we are below this or under the water authority. We are the operational arm of the water authority, and we supply water until the entry of the city. In the city, we have corporations that are also public, and they supply the water to the final consumer. But for instance, we have also a lot of desalination plants that are private. We buy the water from the private sector and we supply to the city, okay? The main question here, who is the regulator? It's not who is supplying the water. The regulator should regulate, and this is not obvious in many parts of Latin America. So the water price in Israel was implemented in progressive way. So during the 60s, one invested a lot of infrastructure to supply water to the agricultural sector. They said to the farmers, in 10 years from now, you will have to be more efficient because you will have to pay for the water. So it was progressively, not from one year to the other, okay? And the price is uniform. So part of the country is subsidizing the other part. So supplying water for Jerusalem that is 800 meters above the sea level is expensive or more expensive than supply to Tel Aviv that is close to the sea. So part of the country is supplying, subsidizing the same thing with agriculture. Giving water in the Arabah, that is the desert, is more expensive than giving or supplying the north of Israel that we have rainfall, okay? All the costs are divided by the amount of water that we are supplying, okay? But this also takes into account the development of new projects. So 30% of the water bill that was decided in Israel is for new projects. We have around $700 million per year for new projects, and we don't need any budget from the government, okay? So where is the technology? That were Messi, no? Messi, where you are. So in 2008, there was a economist, they make an analysis, what happened in 40 years, 2 minutes. So in 40 years, with the same irrigated area, total water use in agriculture, they the same order of magnitude, you produce 4 times more. That's why if you pay a lot for the water, you have to be more efficient, okay? This is the idea. So this is the quantity of what is the, let's see, the implicance of the water in the agriculture that is very high in Israel. But the main thing that I want to show you, in 2005, 71% of the water was natural, and now it's only half of the water, and the same order of magnitude is reuse of effluent and desalination. So this is what will happen according to the climate change. We will have less natural water, and we will have to close the gap with desalination and effluent. But the main thing that I want to point out, that is my before, you have to study. If we are measuring from the beginning, difficult, you have to know what are your water resources. You have to define what are the objectives for of your water sector. You have to plan for short and also for long term, considering all the aspects. For instance, the price of the electricity. Now 7% of the electricity consumption in Israel is for the electricity, okay, for the water sector. And one thing that is you have to educate, you have to train, but the main thing is this one, and this is my last one. Good management encourage or enforce you to be innovative, but the opposite way doesn't work, okay? So if you have a good management structure, you will force the people to be more efficient and to invest in technology. But only investing in technology, you cannot solve all your problems. So I'm done? Yes, thanks.
Thank you so much, Diego. Okay, so now we're going to look around the world, and I am pleased to invite Sergio Marinelli up to the stage. He is the superintendent of the General Irrigation Department, which is the primary water authority in Mendoza, Argentina. And he's the first superintendent to be reelected into the role, so I think he might be doing a good job. And prior to that, he's held many high-level roles in government in Mendoza, and we are honored to have him here to teach us a little bit about water management in Argentina. So take it away, and he will be presenting in Spanish, so if you have the Interprefy app up, you can choose the English option.
Gracias, Geneva. Muchas gracias a la organización, muchas gracias al Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y muchas gracias a Diego Berger de Mecorot, que hizo factible nuestra invitación. A continuación les voy a pasar un video que muestra rápidamente cuáles son las características geográficas y climatológicas de Mendoza. Anduvo el video. Okay, ahí, okay. Thank you.
The province of Mendoza is located in central western Argentina. Its climate is dry, but the snow that falls in the high mountain areas generates the available water. That is why the Water Authority carries out measurement campaigns where its technicians reach strategic areas to measure snow. In addition, snow meteorological stations located in mountainous areas provide permanent information. This makes it possible to forecast river flows and plan an efficient water distribution. The General Irrigation Department is a constitutional, autonomous and autarkic body. It is in charge of the administration of water, preserving its quality as from the river headwaters. The Irrigation Department manages primary network dams and canals until water is delivered to industrial consortiums as well as agricultural user and population supply consortiums, among others. The General Irrigation Department manages water through a model of democratic and decentralized administration. Mendoza is water culture.
Mendoza es una zona, como habrán visto, árida. Está en la diagonal árida del Pacífico y tiene un clima muy seco, 200 milímetros anualmente de precipitaciones, un poco más en la zona sureste. Tiene 6 ríos, 4 oasis que ocupan el 4% solamente del territorio, y todo lo que se ve verde en Mendoza es en base a riego, 100% riego. Tenemos 500.000 hectáreas que tienen derecho de riego, solamente 300.000 hoy están cultivadas. Hay 50.000 usuarios, hay mucho minifundio en Mendoza. Eso también complica. Hay una red de canales de 14.000 kilómetros, de los cuales 1.000 administran en forma directa irrigación y 13.000 que administran los usuarios a través de sus consorcios, con una figura que está en la Constitución provincial, lo cual hace una gobernanza bastante compleja. Y tenemos similitudes en los comienzos de lo que es Israel. Las aguas son públicas, todas las aguas son públicas. Si bien somos la autoridad del agua y manejamos a nivel mayorista el agua, tenemos la capacidad de medir desde siempre cuánta agua se le da, hay registros históricos en base a la hidrología, y cómo se reparte el agua en la cabecera de esos canales secundarios a las inspecciones de cauce. Y son ellos los que les dan el agua luego a los servicios públicos, a la agricultura o bien a los municipios para el riego de arbolado y espacio de equipamiento. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que nos está faltando? Nos está faltando que lo que se cobra anualmente en la tarifa y se fija una vez al año, tanto en una boleta que lleva el pago de irrigación como el pago de la inspección de cauce, que se cobra lo que cuesta llevar el agua, pero el agua es gratis, el agua no se cobra. Entonces, históricamente, si bien es un desierto y siempre la ley de fin del siglo XIX previó que iba a haber turnados, que se iba a repartir el agua de manera no continua, porque precisamente hay escasez, a pesar de que ha habido años que hidrológicamente han sido ricos, esto hace que, ¿por qué nunca faltó el agua en Mendoza? ¿Por qué nunca hubo problemas con el agua, a pesar de que vivimos en un desierto? Evidentemente no faltaba el agua. Si bien hubo variabilidad, hubo a partir de los años muy ricos y años más pobres, pero en definitiva, desde hace más de 12 años, a pesar de que hace más de 20 años los científicos en el mundo y los institutos locales de glaciología y nebología vienen advirtiendo del cambio climático, vienen advirtiendo de que los procesos de escasez van a ser mucho más pronunciados. Y entonces empezamos a advertir, mirando las estadísticas cuando nos tocó empezar la gestión, que evidentemente no podíamos seguir actuando de manera reactiva y anunciando todos los años que íbamos a llamar a una emergencia hídrica que en definitiva no solucionaba absolutamente nada, eran papeles. Entonces, en lugar de mirar la montaña y trabajar sobre la base de la gestión de la oferta, que es en definitiva lo que se hacía, a medida que el agua empezaba a bajar por los cauces de los ríos, una vez que irrigación había dado un pronóstico de riego, porque tenemos nuestras estaciones, como ustedes vieron, y podemos decir cuánta agua con bastante exactitud va a haber en el año. Luego se administraba en la medida que el agua iba bajando, regulando con embalses que tenemos, con una capacidad que nunca llega a más de 1/3 del agua que derrama la media anual de los ríos, y de esa manera se iba repartiendo el agua. No se tenía en cuenta cuáles eran los momentos ni las cantidades que necesitaban los diferentes usos a los cuales recién me hacía referencia. Entonces, si acá se puede ver cómo son las disposiciones en promedio, como en casi todos los lugares del mundo, el agro es el que lleva el grueso del uso del agua, el 83%. Esto no se da así en el río Mendoza, que es donde está el área metropolitana de Mendoza, ya que allí está ahí el 60% de la población, hay prácticamente 1.200.000 habitantes, que tienen un consumo terriblemente elevado. El agro tiene un consumo terriblemente elevado y la ineficiencia en el manejo, en la red y en la aplicación, en cualquiera de los usos que podemos tener, que tenemos, está en el orden promedio del 50%. Esto hace que nos dé, dentro de la mala noticia, la buena es que hay agua suficiente a futuro si somos capaces de hacer lo que hizo Israel, porque en realidad ellos tienen pérdidas, pocas pérdidas, y hay incentivos para mejorar tanto la dotación de agua como para el uso de agua, y también hay castigos para el uso del exceso, cosa que no tenemos nosotros. Entonces, ¿quiénes manejan el agua en Mendoza? Aquí se ve en ese cuadro desde el 2001 hasta el año actual. El año agrícola va de 1 de octubre hasta el 30 de septiembre del año siguiente. ¿Qué es lo que pasaba? Fíjense, esos colores tienen que ver con las distintas formas de clasificar la sequía. Hasta el año 2009, inclusive, prácticamente fueron años ricos, años que no había inconvenientes. Luego una serie hasta el 2017 que ya marcaba sequías moderadas, pero sequías al fin, donde ya se empezó a notar la escasez y los agricultores empezaron a tener, a pesar de una alerta meteorológica, una alerta hidrológica por la baja de los caudales anuales, empezaron a advertir que les faltaba el agua y empezaron ya a tener problemas. Y desde el 2019 en adelante ya las sequías son extremas y por lo tanto el daño ya no es un daño al conjunto porque el agua que se le suministra, el daño está dentro de su propiedad porque no alcanza ni siquiera a cultivar la totalidad del predio. Y esto es precisamente por los malos manejos o en algunos casos la falta de tecnificación, a pesar de que cuando hay menos agua se ponen un poco más eficientes, pero de todas maneras todos están esperando que llegue más agua. ¿Qué es lo que hemos hecho en estos años? Empezar a mirar la demanda, gestionar la demanda y advertir que el proceso a largo plazo es distinto a lo que fue la historia de Mendoza. Puede haber variabilidad seguramente, vamos a tener años buenos. Este fin de semana por suerte ha nevado mucho en la cordillera central y por lo tanto este año quizás sea un año medio, pero vamos a volver a tener recurrentemente problemas y las lluvias no las podemos incorporar a lo que establecimos como una cuenta de agua, que es la novedad que empezamos a hacer, una cosa muy sencilla, muy simple como metodología, que es establecer como una contabilidad donde tenemos la oferta en la montaña, que no es la misma cantidad disponible en el embalse, ni es la misma cantidad disponible en el dique distribuidor, ni es la misma cantidad disponible en la cabecera de los canales que administran las inspecciones, porque hay infiltraciones, porque hay evaporación, porque hay pérdidas, a pesar de que la red primaria está revestida prácticamente en su totalidad. Entonces lo que hemos empezado a trabajar sobre la disponibilidad del agua, dar información para ver de qué manera cada uso, y los agricultores en particular, entonces hay que medir en lugares donde no medíamos anteriormente y estamos usando telemetría en la red cabecera y le hemos puesto metas para que a medida que pasen los años vamos incorporando la medición en forma directa que nos permite evaluar mejor dónde están las pérdidas, dónde invertir y también hemos cambiado el manejo porque empezamos a dotar a las distintas inspecciones de cauces sabiendo cuál es el uso del suelo y para eso empezamos a trabajar con imágenes satelitales, hemos combinado con algún tipo de censo que hizo la provincia catastral y tenemos bastante exactitud en conocer, bastante conocimiento de cuáles son los usos del suelo. Que tenemos vid mayoritariamente, Mendoza es productora de muy buenos vinos que son conocidos internacionalmente, pero también tenemos frutales, también tenemos olivos y muchos cultivos anuales. Esto han ido cambiando precisamente porque muchos por la falta o la incapacidad de administrar esa poca agua para la extensión que tenían cultivada, han ido sacando cultivos permanentes, han ido perdiendo muchos frutales y han ido incorporando cultivos anuales. Pero los cultivos anuales tienen distintas formas de gastar el agua en distintos momentos, en distintas cantidades que los cultivos permanentes. Entonces, cuando uno tiene una forma rígida de repartir el agua, lo que hace es darle a todos en el mismo momento la misma cantidad y eso no hace falta. Entonces, lo principal y lo más difícil fue convencer a los agricultores de que se vean pasar el agua y no le tocaba a ellos, en la medida que la infraestructura no lo permitía. Al final del año, con la cuenta de agua que teníamos en los distintos puntos de la red, iban a terminar teniendo todos la misma cantidad de agua. Pero debíamos entregar de acuerdo a la curva de gasto del conjunto de cultivos que cada una de esas inspecciones tenía, para con la curva copiada en la erogación respecto de las necesidades de los cultivos, íbamos a ser mucho más eficientes. Eso lo estamos logrando. E inclusive estamos trabajando también con una herramienta que hemos diseñado, y acá es donde viene al final del proceso, al final no, creo que estamos a la mitad del proceso de comprensión de que esto es un problema permanente. Estamos trabajando con todos los que manejan el agua, que son mi institución, que es la institución líder de todo, pero luego están las inspecciones de cauce, que son agricultores comunes que toman cada 4 años el mandato de ocuparse de la red, y los tomeros, conocidos con ese nombre, que son quienes efectivamente hacen el trabajo de abrir las compuertas y repartir el agua en cada finca para entrar a la productora de agua potable. Entonces, la capacitación la hacemos a través de cursos de diplomados con la facultad, con nuestros propios Facultad de Agronomía. Trabajamos también en la medición en las fincas y luego dejamos recomendaciones para los agricultores, invitando a sus vecinos para que comprendan que el uso que hacen del agua no es el adecuado y que pueden mejorarlo sin inversiones, con buenas prácticas de riego. Y medimos en las redes para saber realmente dónde podemos invertir los bajos recursos que contamos anualmente, pero que sea más eficiente, cubriendo pérdidas muy notables que hay por lo general en redes terciarias cuaternarias. Y bueno, con planes de obra, que escuchaba la inversión que tienen es envidiable. Nosotros, en un país con una macroeconomía desquiciada, este año, si se dan las cosas bien, quizá podamos llegar a una inversión histórica de 100 millones de dólares, donde la provincia es la que paga y luego los regantes devuelven la plata, pero en pesos, después de 5 años de gracia, y en el 60%, con lo cual no devuelven prácticamente nada, con una inflación del 140%. Pero la devuelven, históricamente en otros momentos la han pagado. Entonces la innovación pasa, como decía Diego, fundamentalmente en la gestión, en el cambio de visión, en apuntar a administrar la demanda y en poder. Ahora, ¿qué pasa? Que hay que dar certidumbre. Hay muchas inversiones importantes que también trabajan solamente con agua subterránea. Entonces lo que tenemos que hacer es un plan, que es lo que estamos trabajando, en adaptar la legislación, que es muy vieja, flexibilizarla, acompañando un plan a mediano y largo plazo que nos estamos trabajando con Mecorot. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. So, moving right along, we're now very excited to have Jaspreet Talwar with us today. She is a member of the Indian Administrative Services and is currently the Principal Secretary of Higher Education for the Government of Punjab in India. But previously, she served as the Principal Secretary of Water and Sanitation and has held many other roles throughout the government too. So she has a lot of insight into the water sector in Punjab, and we're excited to have her up right now to share her thoughts.
Thank you, Geneva. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I've been given this opportunity to present the position of the water status in Punjab, in the state of Punjab. Let me, at the outset, make a disclaimer that the views being presented are my personal ones, and they are not of what the government stand on the matter is. To begin with, let me just say that unlike Israel, which was water short, Punjab is one of the most blessed lands in the country of India, where we had plenty of water. We have water from the mountains, where we have snow, the Himalayan mountains. So we had 5 rivers, which is, that is why it's called Punjab. Panj means 5, and Ab means water. So the land of 5 waters. But after the partition with Pakistan, only 2.5 of those rivers are now left in Punjab, India side of the Punjab. But we are facing a problem, and I'll come to that. So some just basic statistics about Punjab. It's located in the northwestern part of India, and the land area is about 50,000 square kilometers. The population is about 30 million. The annual rainfall, the regions vary. So some regions have up to 300 millimeters of rainfall, and somewhere it is about 1100 millimeters of rainfall. The state is covered with a very good canal network. So there was no shortage of water in terms of irrigating the lands. So that is why Punjab has been called the granary of India, and it was responsible in a big way to make India what is called sufficient in food grain production, and it had a major role to play in that. The state accounts for only about 1.5% of India's land, but it produces about 13% of its food grains. So I think the basic thing which I want to mention here is that it is basically an agricultural economy. So the state has an agricultural economy. It's focused on that. However, so this is, you can see, there are two major crops in Punjab. It's wheat and paddy. Paddy would be rice. So the two crops which we grow are those. And there is a good marketing system for the procurement of the wheat and paddy, which is in place. And that is why the farming sector is very important for us. Now, the annual intake of water, if you were to see, is majorly for agriculture. So about, if you can see, about 94% of the water consumed by the state is consumed by the agricultural sector. And the other major sector is domestic. And there we have industry, but small industry. But as we move along, and as the economy develops, more and more water would be required for the other sectors also, including domestic and the industrial sector. The biggest problem that we are facing today is the declining groundwater table. And if you were to look at the map, in fact, if this is a graphic representation which MECROT helped us do, they are doing a master plan for us for the state of Punjab, is that there are only two areas. If you look at the northern part of India and the southern part of India, these are the two parts where you can see that from 1948, from 1984 to 2021, how there has been a decline in the water level. It's been going down continuously. And these two areas which I'm showing here are basically the northern part is where you're nearing what is called the hill states of Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. So that is one part of the state which has still got water. And the other part is the southern Punjab. And this is blue because there is desalination, there is saline water and brackish water, because of which the water tables are high. So it's not the best situation even in these areas where you can see the blue color. Otherwise, if you look at all the colors, there is a major decline in the water table. Now, if you were to look at the administrative blocks wise, almost 76% are overexploited. That means that the amount of water that we are extracting from the ground is more than the water which is going back again. So there is an overdraft in these areas. Now, one of the causes which we felt is the unsustainable way in which we are using our water. So although we have said that the Punjab does have a very good canal-based system, but over the years, the dependence on canal water for irrigation has gone down in agriculture, and the amount of water being utilized from the ground has increased. And one of the reasons for that was the free power to agriculture. So in the year 1997, the government decided that the power to be given to the farmers should be free, and that has brought down the water table considerably, because a large number of farmers have now put in their own tube wells, and they are using their tube wells for irrigating the land rather than using the canal-based water. And over a period of time, the canal system has also declined, and the amount of output you were getting from the canal system, they've become old, so they need to be upgraded also. So if you would see, 73% of the irrigation is now based on groundwater and 27% on canal water, whereas initially the Green Revolution was mostly based upon the canal irrigation, which was in the 1960s. 1.4 million agricultural tube wells are there in the state, so almost every farmer has maybe one or two, or some have even more, and some smaller farmers do not have it, so they take the water from the larger farmers. One of the unintended consequences of this overdrawal of groundwater has been contamination of the groundwater. Right? So we are facing issues of heavy metals being found in many locations within the state, which is also impacting the drinking water sector. So therefore, today, there is a threat of desertification if we did not take sufficient steps. Some of the policy responses which the state government has taken over a period of time to control this is what I've put across here. Number one is the Punjab Preservation of Subsoil Water Act in 2009. So while we continue to grow paddy, so it's very easy to say that, you know, diversify from paddy and get on to something else, which is more, which consumes lesser water. But you also have to look at the larger issue of the food security. So you cannot bring down cultivation just to save the water. So for this, the government brought in an act saying that at least the transplantation of paddy, which happens, should not happen in the months when the evapotranspiration is the highest. So therefore, there is a law which says that you cannot transplant up to the, by the 10th of June. It's only after the 10th of June that you can transplant, so that the water loss does not happen. Because if the fields are having water in them, then the chances of loss from soil as well as from the plants is much higher. The next is that I think governments and across parties, I think these are political decisions, are now realizing that how important it is for Punjab's future, that if the water is if we do not bring in policies which will help the farmer on the one hand, but at least maintain our water resources, which we've always been blessed with. And therefore, we have an all-party legislative committee which was set up across parties, which has given a report, and which is it is suggesting that in the long run, we should at least measure the water that we are using. So one of the suggestions is that, but there are many more to come. The next is the Water Conservation and Management Master Plan. So I think this is something which was a miss, and I think that is what Dr. Berger, in fact, when he spoke earlier, said that Israel had done it. And in fact, the Mikrot company has helped us in Punjab to make this master plan. The idea is to look at how we can have a water balance which is sustainable over a long period of time, looking at both the resources available within Punjab as well as the various category of sectors and what is their demand. So category-wise demand which is going to be there. So that has been done by the state, and the report is almost ready and would be adopted by the state very soon. But as a precursor to the adoption of the report, the state is also has come out with the Punjab Water Resources Regulation and Management Act. So they've put an act into place so that we start looking at water in a more structured way, and there is more judicious and sustainable use of water in all sectors. Under this act, we have set up what is called the water regulator. So the Punjab Water Regulation and Development Authority has been set up, and this authority has been given the power to even impose, let's say, a tariff on water extraction. However, there are some exempted categories, and the water extraction strategy is that not only a charge on that, but also enabling the money and the fund which is collected from the same to be utilized towards water conservation. So that's the whole idea. And very recently, the regulator has come out with what are called the Punjab Groundwater Extraction and Conservation Directions 2023. And they relate to the industry sector, where they are trying to promote, and I think I'll come to the next slide, is that they are the first, I think, regulator within India to be looking at giving some kind of credits to the water conservation by the industry. So if I set up an industry, first and foremost, the regulator has divided the country into, divided the state into zones. So the highest affected, the medium affected, and the green zones. And based on that, they have put an extraction cost to any extraction that will be happening. And they have also given credits that in case you conserve, on every cost of extraction, you will get a discount. So there is an incentive for the industry to also improve upon this, the water conservation techniques that they follow. And this would mean I can use it within my premises for myself itself, or I can even sell it out to somebody else, maybe say farmers outside who are willing to take the water after treatment. That means the reuse of the water. The second is that the money which they are collecting from this water extraction, they would be using for what is called the conservation measures in the public sector. So remember, all departments are being asked to look at water conservation measures, but money is always an issue. So financing them becomes difficult. But this money can be utilized, so we can make our schemes and go back to the regulator and say, please give us funds, we want to set up so-and-so a water conservation scheme. Of course, the major challenge, like we said in the beginning, is agriculture. So remember, 94% of the water is still being extracted by the agricultural sector, and so far the regulations do not apply. So the challenge is motivating farmers to use power and water for irrigation without jeopardizing the food security, especially where regulation through pricing and punitive approaches is politically and logistically challenging. So it's very difficult to tell a farmer that don't grow, please don't use the water. After all, they're growing for us. So I think the farmer is as much a victim as we all are of the water crisis. The farmer is also facing social pressure. They do understand that maybe they are using excessive water, but they also have to watch for their own economic prospects and of the state, both. And also there is a lot of floods and other situations, so a lot of uncertainty in the agriculture sector. So one of the incentive schemes which was started by Punjab, and I think this was a unique example which we tried to follow, was what is called the Pani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme. So Pani Bachao means save water, earn money. So this is an incentive-based scheme which was tried. This was in collaboration with the World Bank and with the Jameel Poverty Action Lab at MIT. And they did a study, and in fact, I have a report of the study also, which was carried out thereafter, where some farmers were asked to save on their energy bills by giving them entitlements of electricity. So if you have an entitlement of electricity, that entitlement, if you save upon that, you get money into your account. So with that, we found that the results were that there was a reduction in both the consumption of electricity as well as water by about 7.5 to 30%, depending from farmer to farmer, and there was no decline in the paddy yield. So this is without changing anything, you can move forward. So there's a short film that I've got for a 3-minute film if you'd like to see, and these are some of the steps of the way forward.
70-year-old Nirvail Singh has ploughed these fields for as long as he can remember. Today, he says, the water table has fallen so drastically that every year he has to dig deeper to find water to irrigate his field.
So the video will be there on the online slides, but for right now, we're going to move along so that we can have a really good time for discussion at the end. But thank you so much. That was honestly very fascinating. And so next, we're excited to bring Claire Pengali to the stage. So she is the head of strategic partnerships for the nonprofit organization Green Cape, which is working to drive adoption of green technologies and green economy products in South Africa. And although she now is leading strategic partnerships here in Europe, she used to be leading kind of the water and agriculture area of Green Cape, and was, intimately close and working with Cape Town during the Day Zero crisis a few years ago that many of you have probably heard about. So we're going to invite her next.
Hi, everybody. I come from a nonprofit organization, and I'll be talking about the drought that really gripped Cape Town about 5 years ago now. And I think what I'm going to be reflecting on a little bit today is specifically around the work that was done in Cape Town outside of the utility. So, I think it's important to recognize the city itself and Cape Town and the extraordinary measures they went to from an infrastructure perspective, pricing, allocations of water from other sectors, etc. But I think today, just to kind of reflect a little bit on this theme and to talk about a pretty extraordinary event that happened within my city and kind of how other sectors came to the party. So you may have heard about Day Zero. This was a term or a campaign that was utilized. We had a very, basically the summary of it is we had a couple of really, really bad years of rainfall. And summer is, of course, in over 2018, the early 2018, we had this forecast for a Day Zero. So what Day Zero meant is that basically the catchment area, which was called the Western Cape Water Supply System, which is a series of dams that supplies Cape Town, as well as the other users in the region. Once it hit a certain level in the dams, there would be a system of significantly reduced water supply to the citizens within the city. And I think just to say, maybe in a slightly, and comparative to the other speakers here, is that within this catchment area, the urban users are the majority. So you do have agriculture, but they only account for about a third of the water usage from the dams, and they had already been severely curtailed by this stage. So this idea of basically day zero, which I'll talk a little bit more about, was, as you can see from the graph there, every week we got another updated level of what the dam levels would look like, and they'd started forecasting, drawing this kind of straight line as to when this day zero would occur. So this was from, early in beginning of February in 2018, and at that stage they were saying the 9th of July 2018 would be when day zero would occur. So this was a pretty radical thing for a city of 4.5 million people to be thinking about. So avoiding day zero really required whole new sectors within the city to think about how to organize, how to collaborate, to be able to significantly reduce water consumption until the winter rains hopefully arrived. So I think, so I'll be reflecting a little bit about the other sectors that don't normally have a very strong role to play in water management, but really got on board in this crisis. So talking about business, so your industrial, commercial, and users, as well as, of course, tourism, which is a significant factor in Cape Town, communities themselves, and academia. So I think maybe just to quickly say, the messaging throughout was, well, certainly not throughout, but certainly once we hit this period, was very much around collaboration. So how do we, as all of community, all of society, kind of come together and avoid this day zero? And then there was also a very strong kind of fear factor component to it. So there was around collaboration, but there was also this very visual and very tangible idea of what day zero would look like. So they started setting up these 200 water collection points across the city where you would go and need to collect and queue as a citizen to pick up your daily allocation of 25 liters per person. Okay, so to talk a little bit about the business side of things. So this is where Green Cape was really focused. So, I mean, as noticed, we're a nonprofit that supports the growth of green businesses. This is not our normal day-to-day business is going and working with water users. But of course, this is our city. We all jump on board and do whatever we can. So the biggest thing was around really building this resilience partnerships. So we worked with organizations across the spectrum to think about how do we each kind of segment each of our areas of strength and where can we really play a part in this. So the next step, of course, around that was really prioritizing and coordinating efforts. So, from Green Cape's perspective, we've got a really strong technical team. We've got a lot of engineers in there. We were best able to speak to the industrial sector, which, of course, the water usage within industry is quite complex. It's not simply, adding a water filter. It's thinking about reuse within agro-processing. It's thinking about the textile industry, etc. So really thinking about the competencies that we would have. And then we then did some really straightforward mechanisms and messages in the engagements that we had with businesses. So this is our water resilience journey, and we would go out and meet with businesses either on site or they would come to us, and we would take them through this journey. And it was really straightforward. I think anyone in the water sector would look at it and be like, well, this is obvious. But for people who've never really engaged with it, the first thing that anyone ever wanted to do was drop a borehole. And you'd be like, no. You're right at the end of the spectrum. You need to first install a meter. Do you even know how much water you're actually using on a daily basis and what you're using it for and what the quality requirements are? Okay, let's start there. Then let's think about the efficiency measures that you can gain from a behavior change. Let's add some fittings. And it was like really common sense advice, nothing massively complicated. But it was just like calming the temperature down a little bit and just being a voice in the room to say, okay, let's just take this one step at a time and see what you possibly can do. And I think just to say this was I think quite a successful campaign. We met with 400 companies. We over that period, which was in total was just over a year, we managed to help reduce their consumption by 41%, and there was significant investment into the water technology sector, which is actually our key focus area. So it just shows you that even in a sector like industry, that there was even significant efficiency gains to be made in there over quite a short period of time. The other area that of course cropped up was relating to communities. So you saw these, and these are some screenshots from Facebook back in the day. But I mean, people just got involved, right? People were creating these community networks. They were helping out at a neighborhood level. And a lot of it was really based on this idea that we each have a 50-liter per day allocation. And how do we actually make that a reality on an individual level, right? So a lot of tips and tricks around, how do you get your bucket out of the shower and use it to flush the toilet and things like that. So, I mean, looking at this little graph over here, or this pie chart, I mean, I was looking about your 10 liters, I was like, I don't know how we would deal with that. But it's a similar idea, right? So for example, you could only have there was a song on the radio which they timed exactly, that it would be exactly 1.5 minutes long. So you could listen to the song, and then that's when you'd have to get out the shower. You're allowed to flush once a day, right? So, there was a lot of if it's yellow, let it mellow, these kind of ideas. So yeah, there was a lot of day-to-day, really practical tools, right? And how do we make that a reality within our neighborhoods and actually generate action? Another area that was really informed through academia, and this came from quite a bit of previous work that was done in the economics department at the University of Cape Town that really was elevated during the crisis, was around these water maps, right? So at a household level, on a monthly basis, they would publish the data of households that were achieving their water targets, right? So a household target on average was 6,000 liters per month. So that works out at 50 liters per person per day for a 4-person household. And if you were below that target, then you get a dark green marker. If it was green, then you were just over, you were just under that 10.5 liters, so you were doing okay. And then if there was no dot, they didn't penalize you, they didn't put it as a red thing, but they kind of said, maybe go and check your neighbor and see what they're up to. So there was a lot of kind of social pressures that were being played out, but they were, it was obviously being done in quite a positive, playful manner. But this was really informative in terms of really bringing the tangible benefits of what you were doing as an individual and as a household, and actually reflecting it back to your community, right? And then that was, of course, then consolidated, and that information was then published on a weekly basis in a dashboard as well. So you could see not only the dam levels, but you'd see exactly how much the city was consuming, and then of course every week, what was that day zero date, and was it moving out, right? This was like an obsession, right? You can imagine. So I think just to kind of reflect on the graph and how much demand was avoided and reduced, I think it's really important to see that when we're looking at a normal pattern, we're looking at around 1,000 megaliters a day or so that the city's consuming, down to what was close to 500 megaliters a day. So this was a 50% reduction in the water usage in the city over quite a short period of time. It was pretty dramatic, as you can imagine, but it was achievable, right? And I think it was really shown that, community action as well as the whole of society coming along and really putting an enormous amount of effort in can have really strong, tangible results. So yes, day zero was avoided, the winter rains came, and you can see now in the future, right, or the current part, is that now usage is tracking up again, right? So I think what we're seeing is that because of the climate change projections in Cape Town, it is getting drier. We are seeing a shift change in terms of rainfall. Simply reducing demand is not enough. It's a measure that you can apply at certain points, but you certainly can't keep that lever pushed down for too long. You have to develop alternative sources, and that's where the city is starting to catch up a bit between groundwater reuse and a little bit further along desalination. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you so much. I especially, as someone working in water conservation and efficiency in California, we have a lot to learn. You know, we're aiming to get near 150 liters per person per day. We're not there. Okay, so next I'd like to invite you all back up to the stage so that we can kind of talk some about these issues more broadly. So if you all want to come on up here. Find your favorite seat, maybe get some water, get comfortable.
Just tap water.
Okay.
So
we're gonna-
again, the question. We
Yeah,
want
we're
to
going to
check
dive
if
right in. So, Diego, in the beginning, we were polling the audience, and one of the poll questions was about whether or not, you know, we'd prioritize work on efforts now that we won't see results on in the near future. And I think, you know, over 90% of respondents said yes, they'll work on
Yeah,
things now
they
that they
thought
won't
that
see.
they
And
are
you had
lying,
shouted,
yeah.
they're liars.
it's a
And
liar. Yeah.
I'm curious what you have to think, but also a bigger question is, you know, if they're liars and they're not doing it, how? How do we prioritize our efforts?
First of all, I want to tell why I asked this question. When we started to work in Punjab, the chief minister was 80-something. And she was the one that pushed to make this the master plan. And I said, you won't see this. We are talking about 30 years from now. I wish you 120, we see in Hebrew. But it's very complicated to do an effort for something that you won't see the fruit. So the question is, worse or not? So most of the people say, yes, I want to do this effort. Because to make changes in the water sector means that you have to change cultural behavior and takes time. And you won't see all the in 1 year or 2 years the fruits for that. And this is the main thing, that if you, like in Israel, we are talking of water policy that lasts for 80 years. It's not changing with each government. But at the end, you will see that is worth all this effort. Okay.
Thank you for those thoughts. Yes, I do think it's a really challenging topic to really
we can ask
focusing.
again if they change the
We will. We'll see
the
where
question,
they're at.
the answer.
So I have a question next for Jaspreet. So the water challenges that you spoke to, you know, are regional, but unfortunately, you know, are too common around the world. So I was curious, you know, with the rapidly declining water table and the issues of groundwater contamination that you spoke to, it seems that Punjab, you know, may be facing or may face a drinking water crisis in the near future or at some point. How is Punjab planning to avert this, you know, seeming eventuality?
Okay, thank you, Geneva. Yes, it is a fact that if the groundwater is impacted, because most of our water supply schemes, most of them are based on drinking water supply schemes are based on groundwater. So the first shift is towards surface water. So that's the policy decision that we give drinking water through surface water, made more schemes. Secondly, wherever we can't reach the surface water because of the distance, cost factors, their retrofitting of the existing water supply schemes with technologies is being done to give clean drinking water. I think thirdly, most importantly, is to change behavior. And for changing behavior, I think of people, it was important that a department which was purely an engineering department, which is the public water supply department, needed to become a social engineering department. So the idea was to change the thought processes, not only of the officials within the government, but even the role that they played. So we've now developed an entire cadre of people within the organization, which does capacity building of communities. So I think that is the way forward, so that they can work with the communities, and the communities themselves can look at issues of how much water to use, how to use, what are the quality issues, how to check on quality and things like that.
Just one thing that I want to. When we start to work in Punjab, I thought that Israel has a lot of wells because we have 3,000, and they call Israel the Holy Land because the number of holes. But in Punjab, they have 1.5 million. So, and the electricity for the agricultural sector is for free. That's what they said, that they had to change the behavior.
Yes, so that's the movement towards changing.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and as someone who works in the kind of the people side of a public utility, I think that is a really important aspect in addition to all of the engineering staff that we have that do incredible work. So Sergio, you're speaking to Mendoza's clearly facing increasing water stress with droughts and aridification, and you're saying that that is the new normal almost. And so as the director of Mendoza's system, what advice do you have for other water managers around the world who are in similar situations? What would you advise them to face more drought and aridification? A small question.
Don't panic. Go.
Bueno, el primer cambio que hay que hacer, tanto en la mentalidad como en el manejo,
The
es
first thing is to
ver.
change the culture and the mentality.
And Diego will help live translate to
I
English
don't
a
know.
little bit
I
for
will
these
try to
users.
translate what he has to say, not we
El agua que uno le da, en función del agua que hay, pasar a darle el agua que realmente necesita cada sector.
The main thing is to convince the people to use what they need and not what they want. And for each sector.
Para esto no solamente hay que trabajar en lo más difícil, que es lo que decía Diego, que es el cambio de concepto de la gente, que acepte la gente esta nueva realidad. Lo que
It's
más
not
cuesta.
only working in that the people should accept this new reality, that is the main issue.
Sino también proveer herramientas y ser firme en las decisiones. Por ejemplo, el sector público maneja el agua potable. Como les dije, la presión en uno de los ríos, donde está el asentamiento mayor de población.
I'm not a translator. So, no, you have to give tools to the people and to convince the people to use the water wisely and start to explain what is exactly. So again,
La ley nos obliga a darle al uso poblacional el agua como prioridad.
So yeah, the domestic usage is the first priority according to the law.
Pero no dice que haya que darle todo el agua que pidan,
Yeah,
sino que
but this, again, one of the things that they have to use not everything that they want, so what they need.
se están usando por día 850 litros por persona,
Yeah, they are using 800 liters per person per day.
de los cuales la mitad se estima, porque no se mide, que se pierden por falta de inversiones en renovación de instalación.
So half of the water is yes, there are leakage in the system.
Entonces mi condición, que no puedo negarme a darles agua, es que como hacemos reuso una vez que salen de las plantas cloacales,
So they want to reuse the water after the wastewater treatment plant, so
entonces ese agua con un tratamiento adecuado terciario, hoy tenemos tratamiento secundario,
they want to make a tertiary treatment after in the wastewater treatment plant to reuse this water.
nos va a permitir reutilizarla y en definitiva vamos a compensar lo que le damos además con el agua que recibimos.
So they will compensate this with the water that are the leakage in the system. So,
Y al tener la cuenta de agua con la medición en todos los puntos de la disponibilidad a lo largo del río, nos permite compensar y no causamos daño a los otros usos.
so this reuse, it will be also a network of monitoring system in order to see how much they are using in each point. In that way, they will use wisely all this reused water.
And I think that I really appreciate this concept that you said of we need to convince the people to use what they need, not what they want. And I think that's a challenging thing to do, but I liked that nugget that you started with. And so kind of, shifting over to you, Claire, one of the things that you're talking to Day Zero and that experience, which is, kind of the scary experience that we at least look to in California of like, oh, we don't want to get to there. But that being said, there are so many interesting lessons and takeaways, and I'm curious what you think, might be some lessons that, you experienced that could be leveraged in other situations. So like within the climate crisis or in other drought-stricken areas, around the world.
I think the first thing is that you need to have a pretty honest conversation and elevate the conversation with your public, and I think that was a major shift that happened within Cape Town, and the brand of Day Zero, right, is very powerful. So I think first and foremost, there was a big shift from kind of the city saying, "Hey, we got it, guys, don't worry," to being like, "Actually, this is quite serious. We need to get everyone on board." Then the second step is, of course, engaging in terms of what each kind of individual or organization can actually do. So what are the kind of practical steps of what you can actually do? So you get quite scared, but you're actually given the tools to make an impact on the situation. So I think giving people power in that sense is important. And then the final kind of, I think, big takeaway was the power of data. So there was an enormous amount of data that was utilized in various different platforms, and yet suddenly every single person in the city knew where all our dams were and what a megaliter was and how much each person was using. But actually having that kind of transparency as to how we were doing, where the water was going, was really, really powerful, and it made it kind of part of our individual impact, that we felt like, okay, our little 50-liter has an attribution to the overall total.
Well, Claire, only one thing. I think that you demonstrate that the problem is not what we have a lot of, a scarcity. When you don't have water, you know how to use. And this is the demonstration. The problem, that's what we say all the time, that in Israel we're blessed with the lack of water resources, okay? But when you have a lot of resources, this is the problem.
Yeah, I really appreciate that takeaway, and empowering our communities and also providing them with that information so that they can make their own decisions to use only the water they need rather than
and one thing, Geneva, when we started to work in India, in Maharashtra, and the first time that I was eating, the waiter came after the lunch and said, "Do you need more food?" He didn't ask if I want more food. Do you need more food? I don't understand what do you want, but this is the question. This is how do you have to change the cultural behavior in order to use what you need, not what you want.
Yeah, I think that's a really important takeaway. So I think kind of shifting to our overarching SIWI seminar topic of lessons from other sectors, which we dove into a little more yesterday and a little more tomorrow, and today's kind of our focus more on water. But in that thought of lessons from other sectors, I'm curious if you all think, as panelists, would it be fair to say that one of the lessons we could learn in the water sector is to work with other sectors to develop these holistic approaches and to strengthen our partnerships with energy, as you mentioned, with food and transportation? And Diego looks like he has something to say, so I'm going to let you kick it off, but then we'll pass it.
It's not that we have to collaborate. We are influenced by other sectors. Extremely, the price of the electricity is influencing the water sector, and the opposite is not so clear. So we had to learn, yes, to use less energy, but it's not to collaborate with them, to use them wisely, and this is the main thing.
Okay, and do you have any comments on that?
So I think the very fact that what I explained was that the issue was not water. The issue was the subsidy bill for the state out of the GDP was a very large percentage was the power subsidy that you were giving, and that you could control. If you could control the subsidy, you were actually controlling water in the sense what will be the water extraction. So I think that Pani Bachao, Pani Kamao scheme aimed at one thing, but gave a benefit to the other. So there is a lot of interlinking between two departments.
Because you have a lot of water. You understand that 90% of the area of Punjab is agriculture. When you come during the monsoon, you are walking on the swimming pool because it's paddy, it's rice, everything. So because you have a lot of water coming from the Himalayas. So this is the original thing.
But at least we've woken up to the problem, and I think we are looking at resolving the issue. That is why the regulator, and that is why the regulation in water now.
Yeah, and I guess kind of similarly, how have you all worked across sectors or with other sectors within your jurisdiction, and how has that helped? And I think maybe Claire, you might be able to speak to this since you don't just work in water. You know, you're working across a lot of different types of industry. And yeah, let me.
I think, it's interesting because at this point right now, is that we had a really good winter. There's been a lot of rainfall, so no one cares about water, right?
Same in California.
Yeah. So it's and everyone wants to talk about energy. We've got an energy crisis, and of course there's a lot of work around moving to more renewables. So it's tricky to. I think you also have to appreciate that you have to time it right. It has to be based around something that's kind of real. So like bringing in other people from other sectors, that intersectionality needs to be relevant. And I think trying to keep people's attention for a long period of time is really difficult. But I think trying to kind of think about like how do you create mechanisms and measures that have a longer term impact are the really important things to notice, and not be too upset if not everyone wants to talk about water all the time.
A fantastic statement at a water conference.
Sorry.
Okay, so I do want to, have time for audience questions. So for those of you who are online, you can type your questions into the chat. And those of you here in the room, we will take questions with a mic, so we'll be able to take those. And I do have more questions for the panelists, but I want to share my time. So does anyone have any questions for our panelists? And let me.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Ala, and I work at the Technical University of Munich. Thank you for the great panel. Perhaps my question, or it's more of an observation, because I've been working in the water sector, and I feel there is a lot of focus on raising awareness for the end user, and let's say for people who use water, but coming from the Middle East, and Diego understands that people, for example, in Jordan, they receive water only one time a week, so they understand the scarcity of the situation that we are in, and they take that water, they only receive it once a week, and they ration it throughout the 7 days for their different use. So definitely I do understand there is need to raise awareness for people who work in the agricultural sector, for example, but I do believe as well there should be a focus on raising awareness for people who work in the government and not the high-level decision makers, such as ministers, for example, but people who are in the middle, like the employees in the ministries and people who are actually responsible for making decisions, and they are, let's say, the middleman. Just based on my experience, there is a lot of work related to awareness that can be done for that level of decision makers. And I'm just wondering, is this something that you've done before or you attempted to do, and what could be the best mechanism to change their behavior? Thanks.
We are working in many places of the world doing master plan. And when we talk about this, what I show you, this 4, or even in Punjab, it's like you want for a diet. You want to lose weight from here to, I don't know, 10 years. The problem is the process, because not all the people understand what is the process. And that's why we ask if you want to make an effort for something that maybe you won't see the fruit at the end. And this is the main thing that you have to, at the beginning, is to be sincere with all the people, to make clear, to see if we continue, it's what we say, business as usual. It's like the Titanic, we will crash, okay? So we have to change the behavior, but that should be from the change in the culture and the education. This is the main thing. And to make policy on the long range. It's not that every government, it's one of the things in the Latin America, that every government that comes change the water policy. We are talking about water policy that should be last, for, I don't know, 80 years, but at least 2 decades or something like that, okay?
Jaspreet, Sergio and Jaspreet, do you have any thoughts also as, higher level water managers, to her question of kind of how are we empowering and, increasing knowledge in that kind of middle employee level person?
So we do have trainings for officers. So for example, if this project has been done, it would not have been done at the highest level. The planning may have been done at that level, but the implementation would actually be by officials who are in the middle rung or at the lower rung, who would then be interacting with the farmers. So this exposure would obviously then be shared with the others who are located in the non-pilot area to be able to understand what is happening. So there are trainings happening, you know. So, and I think it's a society which has to understand. It's not just the government sector alone, you know. So it's a holistic view that you need to take, because we are all a part of society. We are not any different from them, you know. So
yeah, but one thing that I want to add to you, that at the end you had to build this trust between all the parts, because if you don't trust in the government that will do the right thing, so it's impossible to make these changes, okay? And this is the behavioral problem.
Si me permites, para mí en Mendoza, por ejemplo, es fundamental, creo que en todos lados pasa, cuando hay muchos actores, desde el usuario hasta la cabeza,
Have a lot of factors, a lot of people enjoying the players.
es fundamental manejar la misma información.
So you have to deal with the same information.
Entonces me parece que es muy importante generar un sistema de información pública,
And you have to generate or to build this it's a database, a public database.
donde intervengan los distintos actores, desde los investigadores, la academia,
All the players should be included there, or academy and the
con
private
distintos
sector.
niveles que le permitan incluso al usuario, esto que contaba en Ciudad del
Also
Cabo,
the consumer should
me contaban
understand what the kind of data that they have.
en Israel, la gente estaba pendiente de cuánta agua tenía
Yeah. So it's like
disponible.
the example in Cape Town or in Israel, that the consumers know how much water they have to
En
consume.
Argentina preguntamos cuánto vale el dólar todos los días. Entonces,
Sí,
bueno,
in Argentina we
la
ask how
información
much
es muy
is
importante.
the exchange of the dollar, the exchange rate.
in fact, I just wanted to answer to the question you'd raised that, you know, they give water once a week. Let me just say all the multilateral agencies who are funding for 24/7. So I think somewhere there's a mismatch between the expectations and what is being planned and what is to be executed. Because in the water sector, we believe that if you give water twice a day, it should be good enough for them to manage their water. Whereas when the multilateral agencies fund it, let's say the World Banks or the other financial agencies, they are looking at 24/7 supply. Now, 24/7 supply again means that I have enough water all the time. Should I move towards 24/7, or should I move towards what is the balance between the two? So there are lots of issues which need to be considered there.
Okay.
Thank you. I will address a question to Claire. Where you will be able to develop an early warning system to help other cities to prevent itself from a 0 day?
I'm available. I've got a business card here that I can give to you later. No, I mean, I don't think it's a template that we've applied, but I do think the utility itself has kind of shared its experiences. I mean, like I said, they've also done a lot of, they did a lot of infrastructure work and things like that, pressure management, which had huge implications. I didn't even talk about the what were called water management devices, which restricted flow for excessive use households, etc. So, but yeah, it's not something we've tried to replicate, because, I mean, perhaps I'm wrong, but it seemed like quite an isolated incident at that point, but possibly in the future it'll become more recurrent. I'm not sure, and then we can try and help.
Claire, maybe that you have at the beginning to panic the people, to transmit that they have to panic, so they use less water is the first thing.
But it comes with political risk, right? So
Yeah.
our mayor lost her job during this crisis, right? And there's definitely linkages there. So, and this is tricky. So you can see other cities elsewhere in the world, their dam levels are even lower than, you know, like that 10% withdrawal limit, and yet, you know, you don't have nearly that kind of same sense. So it's a risky strategy, and often politicians are not that keen to play that game. So yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rohan. I'm from Maharashtra, and I have a couple of questions for Jaspreet ma'am, please. The first one was with the overutilization of the groundwater resources and desertification. Do you see that there's a increasing risk of conflict with Pakistan as it rounds, because we are sharing water resources?
advice?
I don't think so. I think it's our own issue. So I think we should be handling our own issue on our own. And I don't think it's because of that. But yes, there are water sharing issues, which I think the governments are working on the surface water. So these are, I think, local issues which need to be resolved. But more than that is, I think, a behavioral change is what is required by everybody. And the acceptance of the fact that there's a problem and we need to resolve it, I think.
Not only between countries, also between provinces in Argentina or in many places of the world. The hydrological borders are not exactly like the administrative or borders that we have.
En nuestro caso, por ejemplo, la ley tan vieja no contempla el aspecto ambiental. Recién lo introdujo.
In the case of Mendoza, that the law is from 82. There's not, let's see, all the environmental impact is not inside this law.
Recién lo introduce la Constitución Nacional en el 1984.
So 100 years after that, they consider the...
En nuestro caso, también estamos tratando de incorporar la gestión ambiental, incorporar al ambiente como un nuevo usuario.
So they want to all know, not only to incorporate the environmental issue, also it's like the nature as a consumer that is very important.
Y en el plan maestro tiene que contemplar la recuperación del ambiente deteriorado por la falta de agua.
And also the other province, I will say. Okay. So now they have also to consider all the consumers, the master plan, also the rest of the province. Okay.
Okay, I hate to cut off a good discussion, but just due to time, we're going to have to wrap up our panel discussion and our session today. And so first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for being part of this session and for providing really kind of different cases, but all looking at kind of these similar issues around water management. I think that it really provides different takeaways for a lot of different players in the room, whether we're working in systems that are providing water once a week or, we're in countries where we have similar water stress. I think there was a lot to have learned. And kind of with that thought, especially with the SIWI Seminar series that are trying to get at the theme of World Water Week and this year, that is innovation, we're trying to ask everyone, what kind of are you taking away? What is, maybe one unexpected idea that came up during this session? And I'm curious to hear what you all have to say. So I have one last poll question on the screen for everyone to join in on. And it could just be one little thing. Is there something that was new to you or something that you're like, I hadn't thought about it that way before? Feel free to share, because I think that I liked that. Less is not necessarily bad. I think, Diego, your little nugget comment on, we're blessed with less water, it was really funny, but also sometimes true. And yeah, trans-boundary collaboration, I think is really important and necessary. And the power of scarcity to change behavior and to move politicians, these are all super interesting things that we're pulling up. And so with that, I invite you all to come to our third session tomorrow. It'll be next door in C3, also at 4 p.m. I know it's the end of the day, but we appreciate you all for coming. And for those of you around the world, I know some of my peers are logging on. It's almost 8 a.m. in California. So everyone join us tomorrow in C3 so that we're going to try to really apply lessons from other sectors and have a kind of collaborative discussion to the water sector and think about how we can take some of these learnings, what are the learnings, and what do they mean for water. So I'll leave you with that. I want to really thank all of our conveners and all of our panelists, and we hope we see you again tomorrow. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.